Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Creditverse, where we talk about everything in the universe of credit. I'm Rod Griffin, Senior Director of Consumer Education and Advocacy for Experian. April is Financial Literacy Month, and it's almost over. So I'm glad to have with me today Laura Levine, President and CEO of the Jumpstart Coalition for Personal Financial Literacy, to talk about the importance of financial literacy and how that can help people become more successful in their lives, and how we can all be involved in financial literacy and helping our kids in particular become more financially knowledgeable, and how that can improve all of our lives and our community's lives. So Laura, welcome, and thank you for joining me today. How are you?
I'm just fine, thank you. How are you, Rod?
Well, in my humble opinion, I'm marvelous, but that's open to others' views as well.
No, I concur entirely.
Yeah. And it's the two of us, so that's who counts, right? So we're all good. How has the month been so far? Tell us first about Jumpstart and its role in Financial Literacy Month and the history there.
Sure.
And then how's it gone? It's been a unique year, right?
Yeah, well, thank you. And, thank you for having me. And on the very last day of Financial Literacy Month, as we wrap up, and, you and I have done a lot of these Aprils. And so I think it is fitting that we get to, sort of bring out this one together. And so, Jumpstart actually was the original promoter of April as Financial Literacy Month. It started as Financial Literacy for Youth Day, which was started by NEFI, someone that probably a lot of your viewers know, the National Endowment for Financial Education, and they turned it over to us to turn it into a month-long celebration that included really everyone. And so we're really happy that now Aprils have gotten so crowded with events and activities and initiatives that it is something that anyone who believes in the importance of financial literacy can embrace it and participate in it and have and do. So we're really excited about that.
So how is it different, or how has it been different the last 2 years in light of COVID? How do we continue to promote and engage? Mm-hmm. Because it's so important, and I think people know Experian was a founding partner of the Jumpstart Coalition, mm-hmm. Still very involved and still extremely supportive. We are always excited about the Educator Conference that's now 12 years. Is that right?
Yes.
Or am I?
Yes.
So we see it as incredibly important that we educate our children to set the foundation and lay the foundation for future financial success. Mm-hmm. But it's been challenging the last couple of years to engage. Right. How do we do that and do it successly?
I think that for us, Rod, and first of all, Experian has been more than just supportive, truly a partner with us in every sense of the way, and we appreciate that, and we appreciate you, and so thank you for that. I think that what we do with the National Educator Conference and did last year, so we didn't have one last year. So when you asked me if this was the 12th year, I had to stop and think about it, because it actually, years-wise, would have been the 13th year, but 12 conferences because we missed one. And so what we did was we skipped a year, and we recognized that, sometimes it might not be worth trying to swim upstream, and that, the teachers who come to our conference suddenly were thrown into this world of remote learning and hybrid learning and wearing masks and all the things that we all have been dealing with. And so we recognized that their plates were pretty full. Plus there was just, travel, there was all that went with it. So we skipped a year, and we sent them gift boxes that had a lot of the stuff that they would have found at the exhibit hall. So this year we're really excited to get back to an in-person event. And we think that one of the silver linings of this past year is, unfortunately, there has been a lot of focus on family finances and how do we get through this economically as well as medically tough time. And so But it has sparked, the silver lining part is that it sparked renewed interest in talking about finance, talking about how do we get prepared for things we don't expect. What is the family role? So we're excited with the renewed interest.
And I think as we see the economy and what's happened with us, it's been an interesting kind of conversation and more focused too. So challenging. We talk about the teachers, and obviously they're key to sharing financial literacy in the schools. What is, and we have conversations around in our world around personal finance, what it means to be financially literate.
Mm-hmm.
How do we define that? I think that's it's an interesting discussion that comes up because we all have different perspectives. In my world, we talk about credit a lot, so that's really important. And who cares about everything else, right? Investing and saving and all of those things. Well, why does that matter? So how do we define financial literacy? What does that mean?
Mm-hmm. So I think that subject matter was, Jumpstart publishes the national standards in K through 12 personal finance education, and even beyond just K-12, the standards sort of outline the different topics that are encompassed within personal finance or within financial literacy. So that's a good guide for, what is it in terms of what things do we need to know, what subject areas. And it's quite comprehensive because we think that, when you're managing your own finances, it's hard to, it's hard to compartmentalize, just savings and just, because if you do one, it affects the other. And so we look at it as a full spectrum. In terms of what it means to be financially literate, the first thing is and there's a lot of misconception that financial literacy is just knowledge. But really, the way Jumpstart defines it is knowledge and what to do with that knowledge, how you use it. It's really focused on ability, and it's focused on making smart decisions within your own context. So, you can memorize the facts and figures, but you've got to apply them to real life, and your situation isn't going to be the same as someone else's. So a financially literate person would know how to make a good decision based on their own circumstances rather than more of a standardized across the board, everyone should do the same thing.
And it's you're right, it's kind of different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And you touch on it, we touched kind of on another issue. When we talk about financial literacy, there's so many things we could talk about. But we talk about the teachers, and teachers are people too. And so in the most real sense, right? And we are all such experts at financial literacy. And I'm saying that kind of jokingly. There are things that we all don't know. And I said, I know about credit because that's my career. When it comes to investing, I talk to somebody else who has expertise in that.
Right.
Yet we go to teachers and ask them to teach our kids about all of these subjects, which raises a question. How do we help them have the knowledge they need to be successful in teaching? Because I think if teachers aren't equipped to teach, they're going to have a harder time bringing it to the students and a harder time being confident themselves.
Absolutely.
How do we help them?
Yeah. So the first thing is that, as a Jumpstart board member, one of our initiatives is Jumpstart Financial Foundations for Educators, which is a professional development program for teachers that focuses on content knowledge. So rather than just training a teacher to use a particular program, what Foundations does is it tries to raise the teacher's own level of financial literacy. And so so having that knowledge, even if you have a program that a lot of our providers say, well, this is a turnkey program. We give it to you. You don't have to think too much about it. But teachers, just by the nature of being teachers, they like to be prepared for the questions. They like to feel like they can add something, and they really do. And so this is the type of knowledge that we think is really important. Definitely training and using programs and training in pedagogy and that sort of thing is critically important. But we also think that it's important for a teacher regardless of the subject, to have comfort level. And that we now, Rod, have some evidence that this is right and this is important. We have just wrapped up an independent study of teacher training and the impact on not just the teachers, but those teachers' students. And so clearly with financial foundations and content-based knowledge, not only do the teachers gain knowledge, but the students that they teach perform better after the teachers have gone through this type of a program. And the feedback that we got from a lot of the teachers is that even the ones that were veterans that kind of knew a lot of this anyways, it was that confidence. It was that renewed enthusiasm. It was that, I think I know the answer to this, but now an expert has said the same thing. I know I'm right. And that knowledge and confidence translates in the classroom.
And I think that's fascinating because, teachers to the children and to young people know everything. And having the chance to interact with and work with teachers, it goes, again, they're people too. And we have to help them be prepared. And I think you touch on something else that's important in helping teachers have that knowledge and that confidence and the ability to communicate the information to students. I have conversations with people in the financial literacy arena often about what is quality financial education as opposed to just rote memorization or memorizing terms. What constitutes quality financial education? What are we looking for?
Right. So, and this is one of the reasons why school-based financial education and, teacher-led instruction is so important, because it is the teacher's ability or the instructor's ability to make the lessons relevant, to engage the students, to make them think not just in terms of memorizing facts and figures, but to actually think about how do we use this knowledge? How will I use this knowledge as a consumer? And so, and there are other elements of effectiveness, and we have a lot of them posted on our Check Your School website under, the essential elements of effective financial education, which starts with good resources, accurate, substantial, comprehensive curriculum resuresources. Also, it has to be enough learning that it is effective in terms of the students' not only acquisition of knowledge, but how long it sticks with them. And so, while we like special events, a one-day event isn't going to move the needle or isn't going to stick with the student long enough. And that's why we've recommended at various age levels, a minimum number of instructional hours that will actually help that student retain this information. But finally, it is a well-trained, well-prepared educator. And now this research is showing us that this is correct, that if you ask a teacher, if you just recruit a teacher and say, well, you're an adult, you have a credit card, okay, you can teach this, that isn't really true. And so the teachers who are either have financial background or have been through extensive professional development, they can teach this better because they understand it better.
I think that's a really important point. We don't have a teacher teaching calculus who's never had a math class.
Right.
So how can we ask a teacher to provide quality education if they've never had a course in personal finance?
Exactly. And that's really where we're focusing because we think teachers play such an important role. And you said earlier, Rod, it is that, we as parents and grandparents, we think we have perhaps more expertise than we do. But one of the things that's important is that even if you are, a financial expert, let me tell you, as the parent of a teenager, sometimes that teenager would rather learn this from anyone but you. Enter the teacher, and so sometimes teachers play, so even those families that really can offer excellent, and we believe that financial education starts at home. So I don't want to dismiss that element of it. But that, sometimes hearing it from someone who is not your mom or dad is effective. But most importantly, Rod, I think that financial education in schools and where the role of the teacher is really so critical is that, we know that many students either don't have families, don't have parents, or have parents who don't have the expertise themselves to be able to provide sufficient guidance. And so, if the parent is also inexperienced with finance, or maybe has made some mistakes, or whatever the reason, there are many wonderful, wonderful parents who nevertheless can't provide this guidance. And so offering it in schools is a way of leveling the playing field for those students who aren't getting it at home. Having parents involved is so important, because as parents, we can give this guidance from the perspective of our own family situation, but with our own values, sometimes cultural values. And so it is a unique perspective when we talk about and learn about finance at home. But we have to acknowledge that not everyone's got that. And our best chance then in reaching all future consumers is through their school years.
Yeah. And so and you've touched on a couple of things. Personal, and I believe that, and I think we share the belief that personal finance or finance knowledge in general, as you said, it begins at home, but it doesn't end there.
Absolutely.
And it's not a one-time deal. Right. You don't have a conversation and say, no, we're done with that. It's a lifelong learning process as well. Yeah. So, when I hear people talk about, and I've heard this argument from very learned, intelligent people, that personal finance education doesn't work because the students don't remember it after they graduate, which means I shouldn't have bothered with most of my high school classes because I'd forgotten most of that. Why did I take trigonometry? I don't use it, right? I think it's valuable that I did. So I think that's the sieve of an argument, that it just holds no water. But
right, and where some of it is, Rod, is that we do know that there is a decline in knowledge retention as you graduate, as the years pass. I mean, that's any subject. But just having been introduced, just knowing that there's something to know, is that even if you've forgotten it when you're an adult and you're going out to make a major purchase or do some sort of a transaction, knowing that there's things to know would lead you to either seek advice or seek additional information. The other thing is that the previous exposure, if you do, we talk about just-in-time learning, and it's not either or. It is that should be on top of school-based foundational learning, because maybe you're just exposed to the terminology, so that when it's time and you seek that just-in-time knowledge, you're building on something. It's not the first time you're hearing all of this. And so I probably get most frustrated when I hear the either or, like in school versus just in time, and the either or, do we teach this at home or do we teach this in school? And the answer to all of that is yes, all of the above, check all the boxes.
Yeah. Well, and that's what one of the things that I remember from high school that struck me was a teacher, thank you, Mr. Schultz, who said, you learn things now, but he said it's not about the thing that will make you successful isn't knowing everything. It's about knowing that you need to look it up and know where to find the answers, and knowing that you need to ask the question. And that stuck with me, that it wasn't necessarily that everything I will learn today is something I will remember completely, but it will trigger something in the future. Mm-hmm. And I know I need to look it up and know where to go to find it, mm-hmm. and the answer, whatever that might be. And that lesson has stuck with me forever, in that one day and that one moment. So, Mr. Schultz, thank you for that. And in my small district, Mr. Schultz was in vocational agriculture, and so VOAG teacher, where we had to keep a ledger and manage a ledger and learn about personal finance as part of the course over 4 years.
Yeah.
So I'm a huge fan of VOAG and FFA, well, we call it Future Farmers of America, even though we didn't really farm, but that was where personal finance lived.
Right.
And so, I learned
and still does today in a lot of places.
Yeah. And so it was a key component, but we don't see that in schools necessarily everywhere. So that brings me to another question. You mentioned Project Groundswell, or what we think is Project Groundswell between us, but checkyourschool.org, and tell us about what Jumpstart's working on there and what that's all about.
Sure. So, also a victim of the pandemic, and not a victim as it went away, but, we launched the checkyourschool.org website in 2019. And just as it was picking up steam, of course, we went into 2020 and the pandemic, and schools started shutting down, which was a little bit difficult because the basis of this initiative is to generate interest among parents and other family members to help us ask for financial education in schools. Well, as schools shut down, even though you still stay in touch by email and what have you, I think that philosophically, a lot of us started to feel removed from school. And so that way it was a little hard to maintain. But really what Check Your School is an opportunity for parents to help us ask for financial education, not everywhere, but just at your kid's school. And if we all do that, then we're going to hit a lot of schools. And I think that it's one of the things that I love to tell parents who do say, well, maybe, I don't have experience with finance, so I can't teach my kid. I feel, I can't do this. The one thing we can all do as parents and grandparents and guardians is we can advocate for our children, and we can call and say, if there's not financial education at this school, why not? And how do we get started?
And I think and I hear it every week, if not every day, from a parent or someone who says we should teach this in our schools. When we do our credit chat on Twitter every Wednesday, someone invariably will say, why don't we teach this in schools? And my response to that is, I agree, we should be. What are you doing about it? And we want to help people do something about it. So that's what, to me, what checkyourschool.org is about, is giving people a starting point.
Yep.
And being able to say, look, you can go talk to your faculty. You can learn from Jumpstart. We can provide resources and information for you. Jumpstart can, Experian has resources. That's why we're here, is to help people be more successful and overcome barriers that may prevent them from having access to tools and resources financially. And one of those barriers is knowledge. So how do we help increase people's knowledge?
Right.
Which brings me to another question that you and I have discussed, and others, and I discuss with people all the time. How does financial education in schools, how can that help communities overcome the barriers that we see? One of the things that's always striking to me is when you look at communities and you can see from the data that there is a lack of access to banking resources. Credit histories are weaker, scores are lower, and you can correlate a lot of the data. Schools tend to be sort of the heart of a community and core of a community. What role do they play in helping with those issues?
Oh, what a great question. So as schools started to shut down last year, and still a lot of them are not fully, back, they're certainly not here in DC. We shifted our focus. So Check Your School and Project Groundswell are still alive and well. We just had to shift a little bit to, adapt to the particulars of this past year. And one of the things that we've done is we focused a lot of our attention on underserved communities. So the goal of Project Groundswell to get financial education in every school is still the goal. But where do we start? We start in the communities that need it the most. And so we have kind of shifted our focus. And in doing that, we've talked to a lot of people. And one of the things that we hear from leaders of underserved communities is that they don't really want, someone to come in and save them. What they want is they want someone to believe in them, invest in them, and set them up for their own success. And as you mentioned, schools are often the heart of a community, because no matter what, there's schools, as you say, that don't have sufficient financial institutions, but virtually every community has a public school. And so if we look at schools and we look at teachers as part of these communities, we believe that we can better reach these students by equipping their teachers to teach them, because they're already inside this community, rather than having outsiders try to come in and teach it. So that's also why at Jumpstart, we've put so much emphasis on financial foundations, the National Educator Conference, the Student Impact Study of Teachers that I just talked about. We are really focusing on how do we help teachers who teach at the schools that are the center of these communities that need help, so that it's institutionalized, so that they help themselves. We help them, but it's theirs, and that just makes a lot more sense.
I think that's something we've said for a long time, and I've said for a long time, is that the surest way to fail to help a community is to go in and tell them what they need to do.
Right.
I think we have to be partners in that process, and partners in helping a community, not pontificating out what they should do to make themselves better. I think it's foolhardy, it's foolish, it's not helpful, because we don't understand every community.
Right. And it's almost impossible to, because every community is different. They have different issues. There are different cultural aspects, and so it would be hard for us to profess that we know the answer that fits everywhere.
Impossible. And I think that too often is what immediately becomes the challenge. Is people come in and think they know everything, and want to tell them what to do. And we have to earn trust, and we have to be partners, and that carries with it a lot of meaning, and it's different for every community. And we need to listen as much as we want to talk, which is hard for me. I like to talk. So I work on the listening part. But when you listen to people in a community, the other thing I know from experience is that young people also educate their parents, and what they learn in school, they take back. I was involved in a program in a fairly affluent community, in fact, that talking to 8th graders about what they need to think about going into high school, and why it's important to take a challenging course load to prepare themselves to be successful as adults. And to demonstrate that, we walked through a budget and what it costs to live in this particular community, looking at rental costs for apartments and everything down to buying toothpaste. It was pretty rigorous. And after a couple of years, we were listening to what they said, and there were parents coming back to the district saying, my child came home and talked to me about this, and these are things that I didn't think about, and we changed the way we manage our household even. So it's a two-way street, and I think finding ways to partner and to be a true partner is critical. And as businesses and as organizations like Jumpstart, where it's a coalition of partners that cut across all aspects. So private business, nonprofits, government agencies, public sector. It's a rare thing to sit at a table and all talk about how we together can make a difference. And I think that's hugely important. So hence my ongoing support for Jumpstart and the people there. So, so I guess we get into big, long discussions about how we help, but where do people learn about Jumpstart and the work it's doing and how they can be involved? I think that may be a good place to sort of tie things together.
Well, thank you. So, we try to make it easy. Our website is jumpstart.org. Our Check Your School website is checkyourschool.org. And our clearinghouse website is jumpstartclearinghouse.org. And so we find people all over the place, and we find, through social media. And I have to tell you that the opportunity to be on a program like this with you, Rod, to get access to some of the people the very, very many people that Experian talks to, and the people who listen to you, they may come to hear your expertise on credit, but as parents and grandparents themselves, may also be thinking, yeah, but what about the kids? And hopefully we can we can help them and be that path. And so we love to meet lots of people in lots of places, social media, our events. And as you mentioned, we are a coalition of partners. So it's not just who Jumpstart meets, but it's who our partners meet to help us collectively. It's our financial literacy community spreading the word to everyone.
Fantastic. And thank you for being here, as always, and for the great conversation. Congratulations and for Financial Literacy Month. And, always want to remind people, just because the month is ending doesn't mean that increasing our financial literacy ends today, right, or our financial knowledge or our financial capability. So it's a way to start the year, not to end it.
Exactly.
Really
it's a year-round. This is a year-round pursuit for us. We're glad to have April and all the attention, but raising financial literacy is way more of a marathon than a sprint. So we will be at this for a while.
A very long time, we hope.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Laura, for being here and for all of the great insight in the work you do and that Jumpstart's doing. To find out more, visit jumpstart.org. To join us at Experian, join us every Wednesday, 2:00 Central, 3:00 Eastern on Credit Chat. On Twitter, you can learn more about it at ex.pn/credit chat. You can watch us here live on Credit Chat Live. You can learn more about that at ex.pn/credit chat live. And you can find the videos on YouTube at ex.pn/credit chat live, capital Y, capital T, ex.pn/credit chat live YT. So thank you again, Laura. Take care. I'm sure we'll talk again soon. See you next week, maybe on Credit Chat.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rod. Thank you, Experian, and happy end of a really great financial literacy month.
Take care.